The sound of metal scraping against metal filled the air as Kang Dae-ho dragged another piece of scrap toward the sorting pile. Sweat dripped from his forehead despite the cool air flowing through the orbital shipyard. Around him, dozens of workers from different worlds moved with practiced efficiency. Some had 6 arms, others had scales instead of skin, and a few floated rather than walked. But they all shared the same tired look that came from long hours of hard work. Dae-ho wiped his hands on his work coveralls and looked up at the massive viewing window that showed the stars beyond. Kepler Station hung in the darkness like a small city, its lights twinkling against the black void. Ships of all sizes moved in and out of the docking bays, carrying goods and people between worlds. He had been working here for 2 years now, and every day he dreamed of something more. "Human, you move too slow," came a sharp voice from behind him. Dae-ho turned to see his supervisor approaching. Veltar stood nearly 8 feet tall on 4 thin legs, his insect-like head tilting as he examined Dae-ho's work. His compound eyes reflected the overhead lights like tiny mirrors. "Sorry, sir," Dae-ho said, bowing slightly. "I was just thinking about the new shipment that came in this morning." Veltar's mandibles clicked together, and what Dae-ho had learned was either amusement or annoyance. With his supervisor, it was usually annoyance. "Thinking? That is your problem. Human. You think too much and work too little. Your species always believes you are smarter than you are." Dae-ho bit back his response. He had learned early that arguing with Veltar only made things worse. The Zephyrian had made it clear from the beginning that he considered humans to be useful only for simple manual labor. In Veltar's opinion, humans were too primitive to understand advanced technology and too stubborn to accept their limitations. "What shipment are you referring to?" Veltar asked, his voice carrying that tone of forced patience that Dae-ho knew well. "The derelict ship in Bay 7, Dae-ho said. "The one that came in on the salvage hauler this morning. I saw it when I was moving supplies." Veltar's eyes seemed to focus more sharply on him. "That vessel is not your concern. It is scheduled for deep analysis by the senior engineers. You will continue with your assigned tasks." But Dae-ho could not stop thinking about the ship. During his lunch break, he made his way to Bay 7. The area was quieter than the main salvage floor, with only a few workers moving around. He found a spot behind a stack of cargo containers where he could see the ship without being noticed. The vessel was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was about 60 meters long, with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water frozen in time. The hull was a deep blue-black color that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. There were no visible weapons or obvious engine ports. It looked more like a work of art than a machine built for space travel. "Beautiful, is it not?" said a voice beside him. Dae-ho jumped and turned to see another human worker, an older woman with graying hair and kind eyes. He recognized her as Lee Min-young, one of the few senior human workers on the station. "It is," Dae-ho agreed. "I have never seen anything like it." "Do you know where it came from?" Min-young shook her head. "The salvage crew found it drifting in an empty system. Number distress signals, no signs of damage. Just floating there like it was waiting for someone to find it. The energy readings are strange, too. The scanners cannot get a clear reading on the power source. What will happen to it?" Dae-ho asked. "Probably end up in storage after they finish their analysis. Most of the alien tech we cannot understand just gets filed away. The senior engineers will poke at it for a few weeks, write a report, and then move on to something else." Dae-ho stared at the ship. Something about it called to him. Maybe it was the way the light seemed to bend around its hull, or the feeling that it was somehow alive even though it sat silent and still. He had always been good with machines, able to understand how things worked just by looking at them. His friends called it a gift, but his supervisors called it dangerous curiosity. That evening, Dae-ho could not sleep. He kept thinking about the ship and what Min-young had said about it ending up in storage. So much knowledge, so much potential, just sitting there unused. He had always dreamed of having his own workshop, a place where he could build and create, without someone looking over his shoulder and telling him what he could and could not do. The next morning, he made a decision that would change his life forever. He found Veltar in the supervisor's office, reviewing reports on a holographic display. The Zephyrian looked up as Deho entered, his mandibles clicking in what was definitely annoyance. "This time, what do you want, human? I am busy." Deho took a deep breath. "I want to make a request, sir." "About the derelict ship in Bay 7. Veltar's compound eyes fixed on him. "I told you that vessel is not your concern. I know, sir. But I heard that it might go to storage after analysis. I was wondering if I could have permission to use it as a personal workspace." The silence that followed was so complete that Deho could hear his own heartbeat. Veltar slowly lowered the holographic display and leaned back in his chair. His head tilted to one side as he studied Deho. "You want to use an unknown alien vessel as your personal workspace," Veltar said slowly. "Yes. Sir, I know it sounds strange, but I've been working here for 2 years without any major incidents. I follow all safety protocols and I have never damaged station property. I just need a place where I can work on my own projects." Veltar's mandibles began clicking rapidly, and Deho realized the supervisor was laughing. "You humans truly are remarkable in your arrogance. You think you can simply take an advanced alien vessel and turn it into your little workshop? I do not think it will be easy, sir, but I am willing to try. If I cause any damage or create any safety hazards, you can revoke the permission immediately." Veltar continued to laugh for several long moments. Finally, he composed himself and looked at Deho with what might have been curiosity. "Very well, human, you have my permission. But understand this. When you fail, and you will fail, I will not help you. When that ship proves too complex for your primitive understanding, you will accept that some things are beyond your species. Capabilities. Do we have an understanding?" Deho felt his heart racing with excitement and fear. "Yes, sir. We have an understanding." "Good. You may begin tomorrow. But remember, the ship remains station property. You are merely being allowed to use it. Any discoveries or technologies you uncover belong to the station, not to you." As Deho left the office, he could hear Veltar's clicking laughter behind him. His supervisor clearly expected him to fail quickly and learn a lesson about human limitations, but Deho had other plans. He was going to prove that humans could adapt to any challenge. No matter how advanced or alien it might be, he had no idea that the ship was already watching him, waiting to see if he was worthy of the secrets it contained. The next morning, Deho stood outside the derelict ship with his tool bag and a portable scanner. The vessel looked even more impressive up close. The hull was perfectly smooth, with no visible seams or joints. It was as if the entire ship had been grown rather than built. He ran his hand along the surface and felt a strange, tingling sensation, like a mild electric current running through his fingers. Finding an entrance took longer than expected. There were no obvious doors or hatches visible from the outside. Deho walked around the ship 3 times before he noticed a section of the hull that seemed slightly different from the rest. When he pressed his palm against it, the surface rippled like water and formed an opening just large enough for him to step through. Inside, the ship was even more amazing. The walls glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to come from within the material itself. The corridors were wider than necessary for humans, suggesting the original builders were larger. Strange symbols were carved into the walls at regular intervals, flowing scripts that seemed to move when he was not looking directly at them. Deho spent his first day just exploring and mapping the ship's layout. There were 3 main levels, connected by ramps instead of stairs. The upper level seemed to be living quarters, with rooms that contained furniture shaped for beings very different from humans. The middle level held what appeared to be work areas and laboratories. The lower level housed the ship's power systems and engines. Though nothing looked like any technology he had ever seen, what impressed him most was how everything still worked. Lights came on when he entered rooms. The air was fresh and clean, suggesting active life support systems. Control panels flickered to life when he approached them, displaying information in those strange, flowing symbols dot by the end of the first week. Deho had set up a basic workshop in one of the middle-level rooms. He brought in his own tools and equipment but found himself drawn to the ship's built-in systems. They seemed to respond to his presence in ways that made no sense. When he needed light for detailed work, the room would brighten. When he was tired, the air would become cooler and more refreshing. "This is incredible," he said to himself one evening as he prepared to leave. He had been talking to the ship without realizing it, as if it were a friend rather than a machine. The next morning, he found Park So-jin waiting for him outside the ship. She was a friend from his academy days, now working as a linguist for the station's cultural exchange program. Her specialty was translating alien languages and texts. "I heard you got permission to use this ship as a workshop," she said, looking up at the vessel with obvious curiosity. "Min-young told me it was covered in unknown writing. I thought you might want some help figuring out what it says." Daeho grinned. "So-jin, you are exactly what I need. This place is full of symbols I cannot read. Come on, let me show you." As they entered the ship together, Daeho noticed something new. The walls seemed brighter than before, and the symbols were glowing more clearly. So-jin stopped in the first corridor and stared at the writing with wide eyes. "This is unlike anything in our databases," she said, pulling out her recording equipment. "The script is incredibly complex. Look at how the symbols seem to connect to each other. It is not just writing, it is almost like a living language." They spent the morning documenting the symbols throughout the ship. So-jin worked with her translation programs while Daeho continued his exploration of the ship's systems. Around midday, they made their first breakthrough. "Daeho, come look at this," So-jin called from the main corridor. She was standing in front of a large panel covered in symbols that seemed more important than the others. "I think I have translated part of this inscription." Daeho hurried over. "What does it say?" "It is fragmentary, but I can make out several phrases. Something about worthy successors, trials of understanding, and inheritors. This word here keeps repeating. I think it means knowledge or wisdom." As So-jin spoke, the symbols on the panel began to glow brighter. Both humans stepped back in surprise as the writing seemed to rearrange itself, forming new patterns that were somehow easier to read. "Did you see that?" Daeho asked. "The ship is responding to our presence," So-jin said, her voice filled with excitement and concern. "This is not just a derelict vessel. There is still an active intelligence here." Over the next few days, their work took on new urgency. The ship continued to react to their presence, with systems coming online that had been dormant before. The central computer core, which had been completely inactive, began displaying information on screens throughout the vessel. The translation programs that So-jin had brought were somehow enhanced by the ship's own systems, allowing her to understand more of the alien script, but their activities had not gone unnoticed. Commander Rothek, the station's security chief, began making regular visits to Bay 7. The tall, gray-skinned officer watched their work with growing suspicion. "This vessel is exhibiting behavior that was not present during initial analysis," he told Daeho one morning. "Energy readings are increasing daily. My staff is concerned about potential security risks." "We are not doing anything dangerous," Daeho replied. "We are just studying the ship's systems and trying to understand how they work." "Understanding can be dangerous when dealing with unknown technology," Rothek said. "I am placing additional monitoring equipment in this bay. Any unusual activity will result in immediate suspension of your access privileges." After the security chief left, Daeho and So-jin continued their work more carefully. They had learned to recognize when the ship was about to activate new systems and would pause their translations during security sweeps. The breakthrough came on a quiet evening, when most of the station's day shift had gone home. So-jin had been working on the main inscription for hours, cross-referencing it with symbols found throughout the ship. Suddenly she gasped and dropped her datapad. "What is it?" Daeho asked, rushing to her side. So-jin's face was pale as she looked up at him. "I have translated the complete inscription." "Daeho, this is not just a ship. It is something much more important." "What do you mean?" She picked up her datapad with shaking hands. "The inscription says, 'To those who follow, we were the guardians of knowledge, but we have failed. Our hubris brought darkness. Only those who build from curiosity rather than conquest may inherit our legacy. Prove your worth not through strength, but through understanding. Deho stared at the glowing symbols, feeling a chill run down his spine. Guardians of knowledge? Who were they? I do not know yet, Sojin said. But I think this ship is some kind of test. And I think it has been waiting for someone like you to find it. As if responding to her words, the ship's systems hummed to life around them. Lights brightened throughout the vessel and new symbols appeared on screens that had been blank before. Deep in the ship's core, something that had been sleeping for thousands of years began to wake up. Outside in the corridor, they could hear the sound of running footsteps as security alarms began to sound throughout the station. The security alarms echoed through Bay 7 as Deho and Sojin stood frozen beside the glowing inscription. Emergency lights flashed red and white, casting strange shadows on the ship's hull. Within minutes, Commander Rothek arrived with a team of armed security officers. Step away from the vessel immediately, Rothek ordered, his weapon drawn but not aimed directly at them. The ship is exhibiting dangerous energy spikes. We are not in any danger, Deho said, though his heart was racing. The ship is just responding to our translations. It is trying to communicate. Communications from unknown alien technology are exactly what I am concerned about, Rothek replied. You will exit the ship now and report to the security office for questioning. Before Deho could respond, Sojin grabbed his arm. Look, she whispered, pointing at the inscription. The symbols were changing again, rearranging themselves into new patterns. But this time, some of the text appeared in basic galactic standard script, the common language used throughout the space stations. Emergency protocols suspended, the new text read. No threat to station detected. Peaceful contact initiated. Commander. Rothek stared at the words, his weapon lowering slightly. The ship can understand our language? More than that, Sojin said, her voice filled with wonder. It has been listening to us, learning from our conversations. The translation systems are far more advanced than anything we have. Over the next hour, station officials arrived to assess the situation. Veltar appeared with the chief engineer, both looking nervous about the ship's sudden activity. Medical teams stood by in case of contamination or other hazards. But the ship remained peaceful, its systems humming quietly while displaying welcoming messages in multiple languages. After extensive scans showed no immediate danger, Commander Rothak reluctantly allowed Deho and Sojin to continue their work under close supervision. But now they had an audience of scientists and security personnel watching their every move. Tell me more about this inscription, said Dr. Kim Hai-won, the station's head researcher. She was a middle-aged human woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for solving impossible puzzles. Sojin pulled up her translation files. Based on the full text and cross-references throughout the ship, I believe this vessel belonged to a species called the Kethmori. They seem to have been an ancient spacefaring civilization that disappeared long ago. How long ago? Dr. Kim asked. The dating is difficult to determine, but based on the technology and some astronomical references in the text, I estimate at least 10,000 years, possibly much more. Dr. Kim's eyes widened. That would make them one of the earliest known spacefaring species. What happened to them? Deho had been studying the ship's technical systems while they talked. I think I've found something that might answer that question, he said, pointing to a large display screen that had activated near the ship's central core. The screen showed what appeared to be a historical record, with images and text flowing past in an alien documentary format. Sojin worked quickly to translate the captions while the others watched the strange, beautiful images of worlds and civilizations they had never seen. The Kethmori were explorers and teachers, Sojin said as she translated. They traveled between worlds, sharing knowledge and helping younger species develop technology. They saw themselves as gardeners of civilization, nurturing growth throughout the galaxy. The images showed towering cities of crystal and metal, vast libraries filled with knowledge from hundreds of worlds, and ships like the one they stood in traveling between the stars. The Kethmori themselves appeared as tall, graceful beings, with elongated limbs and large, intelligent eyes. They look peaceful, Dr. Kim observed. They were, Sojin continued. But something went wrong. The records show a period of conflict and division. Some Kethmori began to believe that younger species were not worthy of advanced knowledge. They wanted to control rather than teach. The images on the screen became darker, showing battles between different factions of Kethmori. Worlds burned. As the peaceful teachers turned their advanced technology into weapons of war. Civil war, Daeho said quietly. They destroyed themselves. Not entirely, Sojin said, reading more of the text. Before the end, some Kethmori created these ships as a backup plan. They called them seeds of knowledge. Each one contains the accumulated wisdom of their civilization, waiting for a species worthy of inheriting it. Commander Rothek looked uncomfortable. Waiting how? What kind of evaluation process are we talking about? Before Sojin could answer, the ship itself responded. New text appeared on screens throughout the vessel, this time in perfect galactic standard. Greetings to the inheritors. I am the guardian of this knowledge seed. I have been waiting for beings who approach technology with curiosity rather than conquest. The human designated as Daeho has shown promising qualities. The evaluation will now begin. Everyone in the room tensed. Dr. Kim stepped forward. What kind of evaluation? What will happen to our people? No harm will come to any being who approaches with peaceful intent, the Guardian replied. The evaluation tests wisdom, not strength. It measures the desire to learn and share knowledge, not the ability to dominate others. The human Daeho has already begun the first phase by treating this vessel with respect and seeking understanding rather than exploitation. Daeho felt a strange sensation, as if the ship were examining him from the inside out. It was not unpleasant, more like a gentle presence touching his thoughts and emotions. He realized the ship had been doing this since his first day aboard, learning about his intentions and character. The Kethmori failed because they lost sight of their original purpose. The Guardian continued. Knowledge became a tool for power instead of a gift to be shared. The evaluation is designed to identify beings who will not repeat our mistakes. What happens if we pass this evaluation? Dr. Kim asked. The knowledge contained within this seed will become available to your species and others who prove worthy. Technologies for healing, energy generation, faster-than-light travel, and much more. But more importantly, the wisdom to use these gifts responsibly. Veltar, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. And if the humans fail this test? Then the seed will remain dormant until other potential inheritors arrive. But I do not believe failure is likely. The human Daeho has already demonstrated many of the qualities we seek. His desire to create rather than destroy, his willingness to work with others, his respect for knowledge he does not yet understand. Daeho felt overwhelmed by the responsibility suddenly placed on his shoulders. I am just an apprentice engineer. I'm not qualified to represent my entire species. You are more qualified than you realize, the Guardian said. The evaluation is not about formal education or technical expertise. It is about character and wisdom. These qualities cannot be taught in schools. They must be demonstrated through actions. Dr. Kim looked at Daeho with new respect. What do you need from us to complete this evaluation? Time, space, and trust, Daeho replied. If this Guardian is going to test humanity's worthiness, I want to make sure we show our best qualities. That means working together instead of competing. Sharing discoveries instead of hoarding them, and always remembering that knowledge is meant to help others. As he spoke, the ship's systems brightened around them, and Daeho could feel the Guardian's approval like warm sunlight on his face. The real test was about to begin, and the future of multiple species might depend on the choices made by a young human who had simply wanted a workshop of his own. Outside the ship, word was spreading throughout the station that first contact had been made with an ancient alien intelligence. But inside the vessel, Daeho was beginning to understand that this was not just about making contact with aliens. This was about proving that humanity deserved to join the ranks of truly advanced civilizations. 3 days had passed since the Guardian had announced the beginning of the evaluation. Kepler Station buzzed with activity as news of the ancient alien intelligence spread throughout the galactic community. Ships from dozens of worlds arrived daily, carrying diplomats, scientists, and military observers, all eager to witness humanity's test. Admiral Hyuk Taemin arrived on the second day, bringing with him a fleet of human military vessels. The tall, stern-faced officer had spent most of his career fighting in border conflicts with hostile alien species. He viewed the Guardian's test with deep suspicion. "This could be a trap," he told Dr. Kim during a heated meeting in the station's conference room. "An advanced alien intelligence suddenly appears, offers us incredible technology, and asks only that we prove our worthiness? It sounds too good to be true." "The Guardian has made no hostile moves," Dr. Kim replied. "If anything, it has been extremely helpful. The medical scans it provided yesterday saved the life of Engineer Pak when he was injured in the cargo bay accident." "That could be part of the deception," Admiral Hyuk insisted. "Gain our trust, make us dependent on their technology, then reveal their true intentions?" Daeho listened to these arguments from the observation deck overlooking the conference room. He understood the Admiral's concerns, but every interaction with the Guardian had reinforced his belief that the ancient AI was genuine in its peaceful intentions. The tests themselves had been unlike anything Daeho had expected. Instead of technical challenges or knowledge exams, the Guardian presented him with moral and ethical puzzles that had no clear right answers. The first test had involved a scenario where 2 alien colonies were dying from different diseases. The Guardian's medical knowledge could save both colonies, but the transportation systems could only reach one colony in time. How should the limited resources be allocated? Daeho had spent hours discussing the problem with Sojin, Dr. Kim, and other station personnel. Together, they had developed a solution that involved sharing the medical knowledge with both colonies and helping them work together to manufacture the needed medicines locally. The Guardian had approved of their collaborative approach. The second test was more complex. The Guardian presented them with plans for a new type of faster-than-light drive that could revolutionize space travel. However, the same technology could be weaponized to create devastating attacks against planets. How could such knowledge be shared safely? This time, Daeho proposed that the technology be given to an international committee representing all species, with strict safeguards to prevent military applications. The Guardian seemed pleased with this answer as well, but the third test proved more challenging than either of the previous ones. "The scenario is this," the Guardian explained as Daeho, Sojin, and the research team gathered in the ship's main chamber. "A species requests advanced technology to solve an environmental crisis on their homeworld. However, investigation reveals that the crisis was caused by their own poor decisions and unwillingness to change their behavior. Providing the technology will solve the immediate problem, but may encourage them to continue their destructive practices. Refusing to help will result in the deaths of billions of innocent beings." The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. This was not just a theoretical problem. Many species throughout the galaxy face similar situations where short-term solutions might prevent long-term growth and responsibility. "Can we provide the technology with conditions attached?" Sojin asked. "Require them to change their practices as part of the agreement?" "That approach has been tried before," the Guardian replied. "It often leads to resentment and rebellion. Beings who are forced to change rarely maintain those changes once the external pressure is removed." Dr. Kim frowned. "But we cannot simply let billions die to teach a lesson about responsibility." "No," Daeho agreed. "But we also cannot enable behavior that will lead to even more deaths in the future." The debate continued for hours. Admiral Hyuk, who had been allowed to observe the test, argued for a strict conditional approach. Give them the technology but maintain control over its use. Monitor their progress and withdraw support if they revert to old patterns. "That makes us rulers instead of helpers," Daeho replied. The Kethmori failed because they tried to control other species instead of trusting them to make good choices. Then what do you propose? Dr. Kim asked. Daeho thought carefully before answering. He had been studying the Guardians' responses to their previous solutions, trying to understand what the ancient AI was really looking for. We offer them 3 options, he said finally. First, we provide the technology they need to solve the immediate crisis with no strings attached. Second, we offer to help them develop their own sustainable solutions over a longer time frame, which will be more difficult but will teach them skills they can use in the future. Third, we invite them to join a galactic community where multiple species work together on environmental challenges, sharing knowledge and resources. And if they choose the first option and continue their destructive behavior? Admiral Yuck asked. Then we will be there to help them again when they need it, Daeho said. But we will also be there to offer better solutions each time. Eventually, they will either learn to make better choices or they will face consequences that even our technology cannot fix. The Guardian was quiet for a long moment. When it finally spoke, there was something like approval in its voice. This approach shows both compassion and wisdom. You understand that true help sometimes requires patience and faith in others' ability to grow. You do not seek to control or judge, but to support and guide. The 4th test involved a scenario where human colonies were threatened by a powerful alien empire. The Guardian offered weapons technology that would allow humanity to defend itself, but using such weapons would likely escalate the conflict and result in massive casualties on both sides. This test struck closer to home for everyone involved. Admiral Yuck leaned forward intently as Daeho and his team discussed their options. We cannot fight superior technology with inferior weapons, the Admiral said. If we are threatened, we must use every advantage available to protect our people. But Daeho had a different idea. What if we offer to share the Guardian's peaceful technologies with the threatening empire? Show them that cooperation brings greater benefits than conquest? That is incredibly naive, Admiral Hyuk replied. Some species only understand strength. Maybe, Daeho said. But the Guardian is testing whether we approach problems with wisdom or force. If we choose violence as our first option, we fail the test even if we win the war. The solution they eventually proposed involved a combination of defensive preparations and diplomatic outreach. They would accept the Guardian's defensive technologies but use them only to protect themselves while simultaneously offering the attacking empire access to beneficial technologies in exchange for peace. Strength through cooperation rather than domination, the Guardian observed. Another wise approach. The 5th and final test was the most difficult of all. The Guardian presented them with a choice that would determine not just humanity's future, but the future of the galaxy itself. The knowledge contained within this seed is vast, the Guardian explained. It could advance human civilization by thousands of years almost overnight. You could become the dominant species in this region of space, with technology far superior to any of your neighbors. Daeho felt a chill as he realized what was being offered. However, the Guardian continued, this knowledge was meant to be shared among all worthy species. You could choose to make it freely available to any civilization that demonstrates the same wisdom and compassion you have shown. This would prevent human dominance but would benefit the galaxy as a whole. Admiral Hyuk stepped forward. This is exactly the kind of decision that should be made by elected leaders, not by a single apprentice engineer. The future of humanity should not rest in the hands of one person, but the Guardian's response surprised everyone. The final choice has already been made through the previous tests. Daeho has consistently chosen cooperation over domination, wisdom over strength, and the greater good over personal benefit. His character has been evaluated and found worthy. What was my choice? Daeho asked, though he thought he already knew the answer. You chose to share knowledge freely from the very beginning, the Guardian replied. Every solution you proposed involved collaboration between species. Every plan you made included safeguards to prevent the abuse of power. You have proven that humanity's approach to advanced technology will be guided by wisdom rather than ambition. As the Guardian spoke, systems throughout the ship began to activate. Screens displayed information in dozens of languages, and data streams flowed to terminals throughout the station. The ancient knowledge of the Kethmori was being released to the galaxy, freely available to any species that approached it with peaceful intentions. But Deho sensed that this was not the end of the story. The real test was not in making the right choices during the evaluation. The real test would be in living up to those choices as humanity and its allies began to use their new knowledge to build a better future. 6 months had passed since the Guardian released the Kethmori knowledge to the galaxy. Kepler Station had been transformed from a simple salvage facility into the most important hub of learning in known space. The ship that Deho had once hoped to use as a personal workshop had become a vast library and research center, with sections growing and expanding as the Guardian systems adapted to accommodate visitors from hundreds of worlds. Deho walked through the ship's newest section, where human and alien scientists worked side by side on projects that would have been impossible just a year ago. Dr. Kim was collaborating with a team of crystalline beings from the Andromeda sector to develop new medical treatments. Sojin had established a translation center that was breaking down language barriers throughout the galaxy. Even Veltar, his former supervisor, now worked as a coordinator between different species research teams. It is remarkable how quickly everyone adapted, Sojin said, joining Deho as he watched the busy activity around them. I was worried that some species would try to hoard the knowledge or use it for military purposes. Some tried, Deho replied, but the Guardian safeguards are very effective. The technology simply will not work for anyone with hostile intentions. This had been one of the most surprising discoveries about Kethmori technology. Each device, each piece of information seemed to have built-in ethical constraints. Weapons could not be created from the peaceful technologies, and any attempt to use the knowledge for conquest or oppression simply failed. The ancient Kethmori had learned from their own mistakes and built those lessons into their legacy. Admiral Yuck approached them, looking far more relaxed than he had during the evaluation period. Deho, I owe you an apology. I was wrong to doubt the Guardian's intentions. The defensive technologies it provided have already prevented 3 separate conflicts just by existing. Potential aggressors realize they cannot win against opponents who share knowledge freely. You were protecting humanity? Deho said. I understand why you were suspicious, but I think the Guardian knew that Earth's military leaders would be cautious. That caution is part of what made us worthy of their trust. The 3 humans continued their tour of the ship's expanded facilities. In the medical bay, they found Dr. Lee working with a patient who would have died from his injuries. Under the old technology, the Kethmori healing devices could repair damage that had been considered permanent, and the knowledge of how to build and use them was spreading to hospitals throughout the galaxy. The mortality rate from accidents and diseases has dropped by 70% system-wide, Dr. Lee reported when she saw them. And we are just beginning to understand the full potential of these medical technologies. In the engineering section, they watched as teams of workers installed new power systems based on Kethmori energy designs. The ancient technology could generate clean, unlimited power from quantum fluctuations, ending the energy scarcity that had limited development on many worlds. The environmental benefits alone justify everything we went through, Dr. Kim said as they observed the installation process. Worlds that were dying from pollution are being restored. Species that were fighting over resources are now working together to build better futures. But the most impressive changes were happening in the ship's educational center. The Guardian had created learning programs that adapted to each student's species, learning style, and level of understanding. Young beings from dozens of worlds studied together, learning not just technology and science, but the wisdom and ethics that the Kethmori had wished they had possessed. This is what I am most proud of, Deho said as they watched a group of human and alien children working together on a project to design better transportation systems for their home worlds. Not the technology, but the cooperation. These children will grow up thinking of beings from other worlds as friends and partners, not strangers or enemies. Commander Rothek joined them, his security concerns long since resolved. The crime rate on the station has actually decreased since we opened the facilities to all species. It seems that having a common purpose brings out the best in everyone. As they completed their tour, the Guardian's voice addressed them through the ship's communication system. Deho, your presence is requested in the central chamber. There is a matter of importance to discuss. The central chamber had grown considerably since the evaluation period. What had once been a single room was now a vast space filled with floating displays showing information from across the galaxy. The Guardian's avatar, a shimmering representation of the ancient Kethmori, waited for them at the center. The first phase of knowledge distribution is complete, the Guardian announced. 47 species have proven worthy of accessing basic Kethmori technologies. The galaxy is more peaceful and prosperous than it has been in millennia. That sounds like success, Dr. Kim said. What is the matter of importance you mentioned? Other knowledge seeds are awakening, the Guardian replied. The success of this initiative has activated dormant seeds on distant worlds. Soon, there will be hundreds of learning centers like this, one throughout the galaxy. But they will need guidance and coordination. The Guardian turned its attention to Deho. You have proven yourself to be a worthy inheritor of Kethmori wisdom. I offer you the position of first guardian, coordinator of all knowledge seeds, and protector of the ancient wisdom. Deho felt overwhelmed by the offer. I am honored, but I am still learning myself. Surely there are others more qualified. Qualification is not measured by what you know, but by how you use what you learn, the Guardian replied. You have consistently chosen wisdom over knowledge, cooperation over domination, and the greater good over personal benefit. These are the qualities that the first Guardian must possess. Sojin squeezed his arm encouragingly. You have already been doing the job for months. Now you are just being given the title that goes with it. Admiral Hyuk nodded his agreement. The other species trust you, Deho. You have earned their respect through your actions, not through political maneuvering or military strength. Deho looked around at his friends and colleagues, then at the displays showing the progress being made throughout the galaxy. Children from worlds that had been enemies just months ago were now learning together. Scientists who had competed for resources were now sharing discoveries freely. The dream of a peaceful, cooperative galaxy was becoming reality. I accept, he said finally, but only if the position comes with the understanding that leadership means service, not authority. I want to help coordinate the knowledge seeds, not control them. That is exactly why you are the right choice, the Guardian said with what sounded like satisfaction 1 year later. Deho stood in the same bay where he had first seen the mysterious alien ship. The vessel was still there, but it was now just one part of a massive complex that stretched throughout the asteroid belt around Kepler Station. Knowledge seeds had been established on 57 worlds, and the network of cooperation continued to grow. Veltar approached him, carrying a datapad with the latest reports from the outer sectors. The Zephyrian Council has officially requested a knowledge seed for our home system, he said. They finally admit that humans might have something valuable to offer the galaxy. Deho smiled. Everyone has something valuable to offer. We just needed to create a system where sharing is rewarded instead of hoarding. As they talked, a group of new apprentices arrived for orientation. The group included young beings from a dozen different species, all eager to learn and contribute to the growing network of knowledge and cooperation. Remember, Deho told them as he had told hundreds of other apprentices, knowledge is only valuable when it is shared. Technology is only beneficial when it serves the greater good. And wisdom is only achieved when we learn from our mistakes and help others avoid making the same ones. In the distance, new ships were arriving daily, bringing students, researchers, and dreamers from across the galaxy. The ship that had once been a simple derelict was now the heart of a new age of cooperation and discovery. The inscription that had started it all still glowed on the wall of the central chamber, but now it had been joined by a new message in dozens of languages. The worthy have been found. Let knowledge flow like water, reaching all who thirst. The future belongs to those who build together. As Daeho watched the sunset through the station's viewing ports, he reflected on how much had changed since he had first asked to use an alien ship as his workshop. He had wanted a place to build and create. Instead, he had found a way to help the entire galaxy build a better future together. The test was over, but the real work was just beginning. And for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy was ready to grow together instead of apart.